It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear, no fear, no fear here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, each and every day from Phoenix, Arizona, here in the beautiful studios of Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com, where we're going to continue our discussion that we've had on an irregular basis. It's just that it brought this up because we had a gentleman that wrote about the drug war in Mexico from inside. And what's going on in Mexico, death, dying, and destruction, is we experienced this, already. Heck, we're doing it now. It was called prohibition. And I just had to make sure that we had on this side of the border what's happening here. How close are we to getting to what's going on in Mexico? Does it overlap the border? Do the bad guys in law enforcement and the drug dealers, do they want it to go across the border? I mean, is it serve their interest? What's going on? So who do we have? We have, I guess I say it, Leigh Maddox. Is that right, Leigh?
It's Leigh.
Leigh, I apologize. Leigh Maddox. Now, she is a retired captain from the Maryland State Police. And she retired in 2007. She worked in law enforcement in the 90s. And now she serves as a clinical law instructor and supervising attorney with the University of Maryland School of Law. So you were an officer, and then you decided to become a lawyer? How'd that happen?
Well, it was a natural transition for me. I have a fondness for the law, and it just seemed to be a good fit for what I would do with the rest of my career.
Well, explain that to me before we get into the details of this. We'd like to learn a little bit about you. I mean, you were an officer at what age?
Shortly after high school, as soon as I was old enough. You have to be 21 in Maryland to be on the force, carry a gun. And I went through the academy, and then I put myself through school at night. I graduated from Johns Hopkins University in 2000, and then went to law school here at the University of Maryland. And did a whole bunch of cool stuff while I was a state trooper.
Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to get the transition here. I've known a lot of people that have, combined careers, flipped careers. They just love learning. They like going to school, but you had an interest in what? The criminal justice system, the law itself. You like going to court. But from being someone on the line, the thin blue line there, out there enforcing the laws, and then want to be able to be in the courtroom on the other side wearing the lawyer suit or whatever. I'm wondering how that transition came about and why. What was your motivation?
Well, So when I was very young, I had a very dear friend who was murdered by a drug gang. And it's a long story, but
we got an hour, man. Go for it.
She was my best friend in the whole world, and went missing one day, and it took them forever to finally find her body, which was, when they did find her body, it was only 2 blocks from the university where she went to school, and she sat there all summer and basically decomposed, and they only ever convicted one person of her murder. And when that happened, and I saw the police response, they wanted to write it off as a runaway. They didn't believe that she had actually, meant foul play. I was just outraged that they didn't conduct a more thorough investigation. So that summer, while she was missing, I marched up into the state police barrack and demanded an application because I thought maybe I could contribute to improving the justice system in some way. So I did that, and obviously went on to have a good career with the department, rose up through the ranks, did a lot of interesting things. And then when I was in law school, because I knew that I wanted to do policy work, and I knew I wanted to be able to back up my gut instincts, my leadership instincts, with hardcore analysis of the law. So I knew I wanted to kind of expand my horizons in that realm. So I went into law school, and while I was at school, I got a call from my barrack. I was a barrack commander on the Eastern Shore at the time, and they told me that a very good friend of mine, who was also a state trooper, had been shot. And his name was Ed Tolley. Ed and I had worked together in various capacities for many, many, many years. He was in charge of our union. He was in charge of the Coalition of Black Maryland State Troopers. He was also a drug enforcement officer. And he did a lot of work with task force, multi-jurisdictional work with task force and whatnot. So he had been working a case right around the D.C. Maryland line, and he had called me that the morning that I got this phone call that he'd been shot. He called me, and he was very, very, very excited that he had received authorization for funding to make a hand-to-hand buy with a drug kingpin that he had been working for a long time. And we talked, and I was telling him to be careful, and I heard something in his voice. I said, Ed, man, you all right? He says, yeah, I just got a cold. I said, well, man, you should go to work if you're sick. He's like, I'll be fine. I got to do this. It's so exciting. And he was just really pumped about it. And so he went down there that night with his team and did the hand-to-hand, exchanged whatever, $3,000 for a kilo of Coke or whatever it was. And the drug dealer, Kofi Orleans Lindsay, doubled back around and shot him point blank in the head. So I get this call with basically that much information, and I immediately, grabbed my husband, and I grabbed, because we were told it didn't look good, I grabbed the president of the Concerns of Police Survivors, which is an organization that supports families of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty, and took her and him, and we went down to the hospital. And by the time we got there, as I walked through the door, another good friend of mine put his hand on my shoulder and said, Leigh, he's gone. And there were hundreds of police officers there at the hospital. This man was phenomenal and just very well liked and very highly regarded. And we all stood in line, and one by one we went by and we paid our respects to his body. And I put my hand on his still warm body, and his head was wrapped up in a turban just to keep his brains intact. And I put my hand on his still warm body, and I had this almost out-of-body experience. And it's like I could hear all the voices of all the police officers that have been killed in the line of duty in our drug war, our failed drug war. And they were almost taunting me and saying, what is this of your justice? You study all this theory, you study all this stuff about the justice system. What is this of your justice? And I walked away from that night forever changed. And I knew that day that I had to do my part in trying to help move the conversation about our failed drug policies forward.
Wow. We are on the edge of our seats. We're going to be going to a break here in just a little bit. And I want to make sure that the audience understands, it's always an emotional motivation for people to do good. The people that do bad, it's for personal profit. It's for, it's not because it gives you a good feeling other than you get more money in your pocket or you want to attain some of your weak of character or something. But if you want to do what's right, you want to do good, well, it's usually accompanied by a sense of justice that must be done and to honor people that you love. Well, That's what's happened. Ms. Maddox is going to help us out. From LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. When we come back here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, in just a little bit. You stay right there.